I'm going to sort of demonstrate this all in a practical municipal workflow. So this won't be a feature tour, but this is kind of showing you the NG911 readiness in practice. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can everybody see my screen here? Oh, where did it go? There we go. Okay.
You look good.
We're good? Okay, so we're gonna go to the east coast of Canada. So sorry, Steve, we're gonna go to the other side of Canada right now. This is a small town, I guess the capital of New Brunswick, Fredericton, and about 75,000 or so population. But here's a cool example of where I'm just taking from ground zero. This data is pulled directly from their open source data set or their open data portal. And oftentimes this is actually the condition of the data that most municipalities have now. So if I open this up in our little NG911 mapper, we can see here, if I load in, for example, the address points, and I run and see, which fields are validated here. Oh, I guess I validated some of these fields already, but I guess we can look at the road center lines. You can see that for the strand line here, a lot of the fields based on the NINA schema standards are missing. And unfortunately, this is the reality for a lot of data sets for many municipalities. And so this sort of, I guess, NG911 layer mapper is here based on NINA standards to help analysts, someone who may not have too much, understanding of even NINA standards, to match fields that may exist from their existing data set. So for example, here, we can apply some auto fixing. So we can try and auto match some of the fields. And I guess only about 6 or so of the total fields were matched. But what's really cool is we want to incorporate new tools where we can make it easier for, different jurisdictions to actually understand what it is that these definition descriptions mean. So for example, let's say you wanted to know what a legacy street name conditional is. We have this little My NINA assistant on the bottom right here where I can ask, what does this field mean? So if you look at the bottom right of my screen, I'm going to go ahead and ask that question. And what's cool is we've directly linked this to the NINA standards. And so for anyone that's not familiar with, and like I mentioned earlier, maybe they're temporarily just jumping onto a project that's around, NG911 standards and NINA mapping, this assistant here makes it really easy for them to understand what a field means, maybe what the field type is, and all the other information that you'd want to capture. And now let's say we're working with this raw data set. We've just pulled this from the open data source. We can see that at ground zero level, there's quite a bit of gaps. We can go ahead and directly auto fix these fields. And so a system like this can make it easy for cities to be like, okay, here's the matching fields, here's what's missing. So we're gonna go ahead and create all these fields. So at least we have the schema ready based on NG911 standards. Now, I won't wait for this to run. I've already kind of ran this. So here's the data set with the field mapping complete. And so you can see here, if I pull up, for example, the site structure address points, and I run a quick validation check, that all these fields are valid based on their type, the field name, and so on. And what's really cool here is oftentimes when we're looking at, even large data sets, it's hard to sort of understand all the errors that are showing up. So what this does is we can actually combine some of these errors. So if you go back to the address points, we can see now for those feature IDs, how many of the addresses are duplicates, how many are missing certain field types, or missing a dependency value, and all the different errors are sort of categorized together. So this makes it really easy for you to review. And in here, again, we can kind of say, hey, I don't know what duplicate address means. Does that mean that, just a street name and street number are the same? We can go back to our little NINA assistant here and say, hey, what is duplicate address? And ask that question. And again, you can ask all sorts of questions related to the NG911 GIS standards, ranging from attributes to fields to as well as topology. Well, here it is, the concept of duplicate address. I'm sure most people on the call probably know what this means. But again, this makes it really easy for like junior staff or new members on a project jumping on to understand some of the NINA standards from this assistant alone. What's cool is this is actually connected to an ArcGIS Online organization. So I mentioned earlier, like a lot of times when municipalities are trying to handle some of their NG911 data and address points, they don't want to be taking on some type of new software or new infrastructure. We all know how IT teams can be. So this is really cool where it's directly connected to your ArcGIS Online. So you just load in a feature layer, and then we can go in here and actually edit all these duplicate addresses. So if we go in here and maybe we're going to select, I don't know, we'll look at all 10 of them and we want to see them on a map. This will go in and select those 10 specific address points. And on the left is where you'll see the actual fields. Now, oftentimes municipalities, they tend to have legacy fields, fields that aren't related at all to NINA. So you can kind of hide any fields that aren't a part of the NINA schema. And what's really cool is when we go in here and let's say we wanted to edit this feature, using open data set to populate open data. So for example, in Fredericton, we already know, like based on the lat long of some of these addresses, which county, which state, or here in Ontario, in Canada, which province. So a lot of these fields can actually populate it automatically because this takes a lot of time, especially when you're dealing with a large data set. And although you can run like batch processing, and there's tools out there where, and I've seen now where model builders and FME, you can go in here and effectively, basically update batches as well of addresses. So if I wanted to look at my fire service boundary and I had a unique, global ID, so we'll say autofill, and we got this here, the psap.nb.ca for New Brunswick, we can populate this, all the features of this data set automatically through some batch processing. But let's say you wanted to just validate a single feature. You also have the ability to validate, for example, this address point. And what's neat here is we've added, for example, the street type. And again, I won't go too much into the features here, but I really wanted to highlight, the ability to start from ground zero, build some type of structure that aligns with NINA, and then have the ability to actually edit all the errors and validation errors that might come up with your address points. Similarly here, if we wanted to see what the missing conditional value was, we can highlight that field. We can highlight the dependency value. And this here on the left will highlight, for example, the street name is missing or so on. But in terms of my demo, I'm going to stop here for now. All the data validation, NG911 submissions, and what's cool is you can directly submit this data set as well. And I think in the future, we'd like to set up integrations directly with, societies like ICI, where these can go directly to them as well for their review. And then you can sort of queue up different types of submissions, so it makes it easier for you to track and log different changes that are being made for your data sets.